Hello, Steve Walker here at Promise Money. Today I'm going to be talking to you about developments for first-time developers. What do we mean by a first-time developer? Doesn't mean you've never done it before. What it means is you've either never done it before, or you may be a hugely experienced builder but you've never done it with your own cash. Now, lenders will treat that as a first-time developer. Certainly you've got a bit of a step up and an advantage over somebody who's never done it before, but even so, if you've not used your own cash and you've not developed your own properties out, you are a first-timer. So I think the first thing to do is let's get inside the head of the lenders to see what they're thinking. What they are thinking is, if this all goes wrong, how do we get out? How do we get our money back? So they are going to look at things like costs. Let's take a scenario: you're doing a ground-up build and your costs are $300,000 to build this property. You've never done it before, or you might even be an experienced builder. In fact, if you're an experienced builder, it gets even trickier because you know all the tricks. You know where you can get things cheaply. You've probably got people who can come and do work for you free of charge. You might be doing some of it yourself. You're not factoring that into your costs. Whereas the lender's thinking, if this goes wrong and we hit a problem and they have to take over the build, how much is it going to cost us to finish it, the developer? So your costs are relevant, but not as relevant as you might think. So when they instruct a survey and a valuer to go out and look at the plot, they're going to say, look at the schedule of costs and tell us what it's going to cost us to do it. Because if we've got to step in, we need to know what it's going to cost us, not what it would have cost you. And then on top of that, we've got to make a profit or at least cover our costs so that we can get out. So costs, really, really important. They will look at them closely. Now, where their costs are here and yours are here, then the whole piece about experience becomes more important, because is your experience correct? Are you able to get them at these costs? And there is no single answer and decision-making process to this whole development thing. They weigh up all of these elements. So cost is important. Now let's talk about experience. What is your experience of doing this sort of job before? If you don't have much experience, or it's a massive step up, and I'll talk about that in a moment, they're likely to say, well, look, we'll do it, but we need to know that whoever's doing the work has got the experience. And if you can't evidence that you've got the experience, they're going to say, we'd like a JCT contract in place. That's a sort of a go-to. Now, a JCT contract specifies between you and the contractor what the costs, what's going to be done, who's going to do it, when they're going to do it, and what are the costs of doing it. Now, a JCT contract is a good idea whether you're going for development finance or not, because it really does button down your contractor. So with a JCT contractor, they're going to feel a lot happier that everything's been properly costed out and there's somebody who knows what they're doing. But just because you've got that contract, that isn't enough. Depending on the size of your contract, especially if it's a big one, they will look at that contractor and say, well, it's all right having the contract, but is he up to the job? Because you could be a first-time developer, or you could have a small amount of experience. But imagine you're taking a big step up to do a big project, and I've got one like this at the moment, where a guy, he's done a number of small builds, a single house, a couple of flats, some conversions, even did some offices, but it's sort of £300,000 or £400,000 territory. And for the last 20 years, he's been sitting on a piece of land which has been used as a car park, and he's now got permission to build multiple apartments with commercial underneath. It's a £5.5 million project. Now he's saying, look, I've got the experience. The lender's saying, well, not at this level you haven't. So he's saying, well, I've got a great contractor. Well, let's have a look at your contractor. They look at the contractor's balance sheet. There's not much there. He's been trading a while. He might have some experience. But if he walks away, he's got no skin in the game. He could walk away and liquidate his company. So what they're thinking is, what is the strength of the contractor? The experience of the contractor and the financial strength of the contractor. Now, what's going to help mitigate all of that is if the guy who's looking to do the build has somebody else in the business who's potentially got the experience. And when I say in the business, he's a shareholder. He's got skin in the game. So bringing somebody else in to complement your experience or to build on your experience, that definitely helps. But you can't just, I say you can't, you can, it depends on the project. But it's better if they've got skin in the game, they've got shares in the business, if they're giving personal guarantees in the same way that the lender would ask you to give personal guarantees. That's all going to help to strengthen the case. Other things that will strengthen the case is going to be the asset background of the borrowers. So if you are a first-time, I'm being really simplistic here, but if you're a first-time developer, you've never done it before, you're living in council accommodation or in rented accommodation, and you say, right, I'd like to build a house and upon completion I'll sell it and make some profit, or even on completion I want to move into it, they're going to say, okay, well, if it all goes wrong, we might have covered off the cost, but what's your asset background? What's your go-to? If you hit a problem, where's the money going to come from to solve that problem? If we've got personal guarantees, do they have any value? If you don't own any other assets, what's the value of those personal guarantees? So that can be an issue as well. Assets of the borrower and background of the borrower. Income of the borrower. If you've got a good substantial income, that can be a mitigant, that can help. So add to that experience, assets and income. Depending on those, that can help or it can hinder. Also, how much skin in the game are you having on that particular deal? So let's talk about what that could look like. You could, for example, have a scenario where you say, well, look, I've got enough money to buy the plot, I've got enough money to do half the works, I only need you to fund the final 50% of the works, and the lender's going to say, okay, that means you're taking most of the risk. If you're saying, I've only got £50,000 and but it's a really good development, it's very, very profitable once we get to the end, but I'd like you to cover 100% of the purchase price and most of the costs, then the lender's going to say, well, hang on, we've got everything to lose here, you've not got an awful lot to lose. So they will always look at the numbers and the amount that you need at day one and the percentage of the GDV. And, you know, typically numbers are 65 to 70% day one, 65 to 70% of the GDV. That's what you can borrow. But then the lender's going to look at all of the costs and analyse that right down. A big mistake that a lot of people make is that they look at how much money do we need at day one, what do we need to do the build, and if that all fits, then it ought to be okay. What lenders do is they come at it from the other way. They say, okay, what's it going to be worth when it's finished? What's the cost going to be of getting it to that point? What's the cost of finance going to be of financing getting it to that point? How much profit does the developer need to make? And this is important, the profit bit. How much profit should the developer make out of this for us to consider it viable? 15%. Okay, so if you take the GDV, take off the profit element, take off the cost of the build, take off the cost of the finance, take off any contingencies and other matters such as any levies from the council or anything like that, that gets you back to a figure of what they think the plot is worth now. Now, so you might be looking at a plot and think it's worth £300,000. They start at the top and work backwards and say, well, in our mind, if you're going to make a 15% profit, it's only worth £150,000. There's a challenge. The costs, as I mentioned, I think, that they will work on what it's going to cost them, not what it's going to cost you. So they will work back to that residual value. So to summarise, when you're looking at a project like this, there are lots of things you can do to help yourself out. Be professional. Expect to provide a detailed schedule of costs of works and a rationale. If you're getting things below cost, a rationale for why you are getting it below cost. It's my job to present you and your business proposal in the most professional manner possible, so that a lender looks at it and says, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. So schedule of costs, details of your planning, details of what you're intending to do, who your contractors are, if you've got any specialist contractors, who they're going to be, the background to your contractor, then how much money are you putting in at day one or early on in the process to make it all work? What's your profit going to be? What's your experience? What's your asset background? What are you going to do if it goes wrong? What are they going to do if they have to come to you for the money? Do you have the asset background with you, so that they know that their personal guarantees have some value? Don't get me wrong, lenders want to lend, and all of these factors that we throw into this melting pot when it comes to development are going to affect the rate that you get, the fees you get, and the choice of lenders, and even whether some lenders will play or won't. And the bigger the project gets, the more picky they're going to be about these things, especially experience. I should mention, I suppose, that if you're looking to take on a project on your own and you don't have experience, if you can bring somebody else into that project who does, and they have skin in the game, and I'm not talking about the contractor because he's obviously going to have experience, but if somebody's coming in and they've got skin in the game, they are a shareholder in the business, they've got assets and experience, that's really going to strengthen your application. So that's worth bearing in mind. And for those of you who are experienced in doing this because you are builders, but you've not done it for yourself before, it does help that you've got the experience and we can show projects that you've done in the past. But the lender is still going to look at these, all of these other factors in the round, and say, okay, is this too big a step up? Is this something this guy can do? So it's all of this is still relevant. Be professional, put it together professionally. Don't do it on the back of a fag packet. Work out your costs. Make yourself look as good and professional and experienced as you can with a good asset background. It's going to go a long, long way. If you need any help on that, or you want to chat about a particular scenario, then by all means do get in touch. Go to promisemoney.co.uk and check out our other videos on YouTube, which go into a little bit more detail about development, conversions and all that sort of thing. Hope you found this helpful and interesting, and maybe we'll talk soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.